In today's world, there's an ever-increasing availability of food. Some choose to go whole hog and some choose to leave the hog behind, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Thank you for joining us in the first of many discussions. My name is Ben Vickers, and this is Real Talk. Today on the menu we have two very different sides, but both are equally appetizing. Representing the vegan side of things, we have Jessica Albright, who is a graduate student here at Missouri State University. And on the opposing side, supporting the meat industry and kind of the agricultural side of things, we have Mercer Martin, who is an agri-communications major here at Missouri State. Thank you both of us for joining us today. Let's go ahead and start with a quick introduction. Jessica, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'm really glad that you guys are hosting this debate today because I feel like I can relate to both sides, knowing that I grew up as a meat eater and I can sympathize with people who might not know about all the things that go into the meat industry, and I want to just show about all the benefits of a vegan diet. I mean, there's health benefits, not to mention it's very cruel to the animals. It's a lot more sustainable towards the environment. You are supporting world hunger if you are not vegan. There's a lot of other reasons why you should go vegan, and I'm really glad to host this debate with my peers so that way we can bring all these up in discussion.
All right, and how about you, Mercer?
Yes, so I'm an agriculture major. I firmly believe in the agricultural industry and the way that we raise animals today. I myself have grown up raising a small herd of Red Angus cattle, as well as Rhode Island red chickens for eggs, and the cattle are raised for beef. So I'm certainly involved in the agriculture industry and in the meat industry. And I firmly believe that meat can be, and animal products can be an important part of a healthy diet. I firmly believe that conventional ways that we're raising animals today are completely sustainable and are totally ethically done. And that individuals who want to eat meat and want to sustain on that diet should not feel in any way that they are violating any form of ethics. And when we look at mainstream America and how we believe animals should be treated today. I don't have anything against a vegan diet. If someone chooses to do so, I believe you can do so in a healthily way. I'm sure, Jessica, you are certainly living a healthy lifestyle on a vegan diet, but I don't believe that that should be the ethical standard for people today.
Okay, wow, this is going to be a really great debate. I'm really glad that we're going to do this. Jessica, I'll start with you for the first question. So you said in your intro that you believe that it is completely it would be completely sustainable and kind of an ethical standard to be vegan. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So I found out of all this through a crash course of documentaries, really, and through Animal Rights Club we show a lot of these documentaries too. I highly encourage you to check out the documentary Earthlings because that's a lot how I learned about it. Basically, what I have found is that the standards in the animal ag industry are not very ethical, and I'm sure Mercer will elaborate on how he feels it is, but 99% of our farms are factory farms. And so while our students here might not be working on factory farms yet, and that's probably where the lines are getting a little bit blurred because they're like, oh, well, with my family farm, we don't do these things. However, when you look into the industry, when you look into 99% of how the meat that you eat, when you go stand in the Chick-fil-A line, that's not coming from a family farm. That's coming from a factory farm. And those standards are very unethical. The way those animals are treated is quite disgusting, and to know that with your dollars you're supporting animals to be abused and animals to be tortured and slaughtered inhumanely is just wrong. And then not to mention the health benefits of a vegan diet. I mean, if you watch the documentary What the Health, you'll find that, I mean, not eating meat contributes to cancer. Like, I know the American Dietetics Association rated a bacon and I think pork or some other meat, I have the sources here, I can look up later if you want, but they rate it as a type 1 carcinogen, which is like the same as a cigarette. Yeah. So, I mean, basically big business, ag business is brainwashing us to think that we need meat when we really don't need meat. As Mercer said, we can have completely healthy, completely sustainable diets on a plant-based diet. So why are we eating meat? I mean, we basically can cut out the middleman being the animals, because all the protein we get comes from the grains that the animals eat. So if we just eat plants, and then we wouldn't have to mass produce these animals who are contributing to global warming, which I can talk about a little bit more here. I know my answer's really long here, but just to wrap it up.
No, that's totally fine. And I forgot to mention earlier, Jessica is the founder and president of the Animal Rights Club on campus. She really knows her stuff, obviously. So, Mercer, would you like to give a rebuttal to that statement?
Yeah, sure. Let's see if I can hit everything as we go through. But starting with the issue of factory farms and the way animals are raised in America today. I'm not exactly sure where you got the 99% of farms are factory farms, but I would also say that nearly that exact same number are actually family farms. Because when you look at what a factory farm is today, they're still run by families. Our farms have gotten tremendously larger as time has gone by. Very rarely do you have small little farms that are just scattered throughout the country. They're large and they're incorporated. However, they're still run by families. Over 90% of farms in America are still run by families. When you look at the lifespan of most of our animals today, you look at the beef industry like myself, the vast majority of the time that a cow is raised before slaughter is actually done in a cow, is done in a pasture with its mother. And so the idea that our animals are raised entirely in factories, I would say, is not entirely true. However, it is true that at a certain point they are put in a more factory type situation. And that is true up to their slaughter. Animals are placed in that situation. But here's what I would say is, meat eaters often have to struggle with this idea that, oh, I'm eating meat because I like it and I really want it, but I just need to push the ethical issue into the back of my mind because I know they're being mistreated at these factories and everything. However, I think that comes from a lack of understanding of animals and really how they think and how they feel. Because humans, we have this incredibly broad range of emotions, and we try to put these emotions on animals when they simply do not have the same mind as us, not even remotely. Having grown up with animals and working with them my entire life and centuries of empirical evidence of how we raise animals, we find that they really feel stress and they feel calmness. That is really the range of their emotions. And we in the animal agricultural industry do everything we can to keep them calm. How do we do that? We make sure that they are always healthy. They always have food. They always have water. We do everything we can up to slaughter to make sure that they are not in that stressful environment. And so people, for example, are often concerned about they want cage-free eggs. But what they don't realize is that when you put chickens together in a large barn and they're not separated, there's a pecking order for a reason. They attack each other. You have higher mortality rates. And beyond that, we want our animals to be as calm and healthy as possible because we lose money if they're not. They die if they're not. Stress, they lose weight, they lose their body functions. So I can assure you that the way the animals are raised today, with real exceptions that we need to work on, but our general practices are done in a way to keep animals in a calm environment that is healthy for them and their mental state. To hit the next comment, I guess, about the environment and world hunger, we by far produce enough food today to feed the entire world. It is false to say that world hunger is a result of one type of industry or this type of industry. We have enough food. The problem is getting it to the people that need it. The problem is wealth disparity throughout the world. Is poverty, is infrastructure. We cannot get the food to the people we need. So if we want to solve world hunger, the answer is not to end the animal agriculture industry. The answer is to solve the issues of poverty worldwide and solve ways to get this food to them. So I think there's other ways to do that besides, choosing veganism.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you mind if I comment on that real fast?
Yeah,
I'm so
absolutely.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so they asked me to bring some sources along, so I just want to point out this one source that I got on world hunger too, because a lot of people, they say like, oh, well, how does that have anything to do, world hunger? And one of these sources I brought with, it says over 800 million people who do not have enough food to eat, while there's 90 million acres of land that are currently used to grow corn to feed factory farmed animals. So I don't know if you want to discuss that a little bit more, that there's food that's being grown to feed those animals. Like we could like cut out the middleman, you know what I mean? So like,
I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, it's true. Like, we in America, the majority of our corn is not going to humans. It's going to ethanol and it's going to cattle being raised for us to consume those animals. However, again, even with that massive amount of corn and crops that we are growing for animals, we still have a surplus. We still have enough. It's just a matter of getting it to those people. So I do not see how transforming that to just serving it to people, that's going to crash our economy. That is going to have major implications because we are going to see a surplus of food that is going to absolutely crash a huge sector of our economy in the United States. And it's not going to be able to get to the people who need it worldwide, because already we know that we're not able to do that. We know that we don't have the infrastructure to do so. So I don't see that as solving any problems.
Yeah, those are both very good answers, and in fact, that is true. Both of you guys are right, and you're saying the same thing. The vast majority of corn and soybeans in this country does go to feedlots, and it goes directly into the bellies of the cattle. And I grew up on a farm myself, and what we like to do is kind of a crop rotation system where we will grow corn, and then we'll have the cattle graze it, and it'll help fertilize it, and it's kind of a never-ending cycle. And the viewer can take that as good or bad, but it all depends on kind of the experience in the individual farmer. Now, kind of based off what Mercer was saying, I was going to ask you, there are approximately like 2 million cattle in Missouri alone. Is it total in families? Those 2 million cattle. There aren't any massive feedlots here. What do you think would happen if the cattle market just all of a sudden crashed, and we have 2 million cattle just specifically in Missouri, and we all switched to veganism? Can you give us kind of a rundown about how that kind of turnover looks?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be a perfect world? Everyone turns vegan like that, right? I feel like that would be a great sci-fi film for sure, because I mean, that wouldn't happen immediate like that. And so the thing is, hypothetically situation, if that happens, see, the thing is, what we need to do is we need to minimize our demand for these industries, and then through doing that, farmers will not produce as much cattle, because these cattle don't just pop out of nowhere. I mean, the farmers are raising these cattle, they're mass producing these cattle, or animals in general, like pig farms, stuff like that. You look at North or South Carolina, I have a source in here somewhere where it says they have more pigs in South Carolina than they do people. These people are mass producing these animals, and that's why they're running out of space to put them, and that's why these factory farms come about, where you see pigs in small gestation crates, not running around in mud pits like you would think you would see on TV. No, they're in small gestation crates because we're running out of space to put all these animals. And so in a perfect world, yes, where stuff would disappear like that, then we would gradually not produce as many cows. There would not be 2 million cows in Missouri. There would be however many cows naturally occur, which I'm sure Mercer will tell you how many naturally occur, but it's certainly not that many because people are mass producing them for the demand. So we just need to quit demanding it.
Do you have a rebuttal for that, or?
My argument is simply that, Jessica believes, and understandably she has this idea that, we just ethically should not be raising animals for meat consumption, and because of that we need to decrease this demand. And I understand that. Like, if you have that conviction, that is your conviction. But I would just argue that my ethical point and the ethical standpoint of the vast majority of Americans is that it is okay to be supporting this industry as long as these animals are being raised in a humane manner. We can still use them to the end of their life for our own selves. And so I don't see the need to end that demand. It is my only point against that. Because this is such a huge part of culture and health and of life for so many people throughout the world. Beyond that, going back to the issue of growing crops versus livestock, if anyone who has lived in the Ozarks or grown up in the Ozarks knows, there is no crop production in the Ozarks practically, because this entire land is only suitable for livestock production. So really, even going to that, if we were to start, decreasing the demand, I mean, this land is not going to be used for something different. It's not. It's not going to be productive to help solve any problems. It will just go to nothing. So I just don't see the need to make that shift.
Why can't we use the land to grow like peppers and, potatoes and vegetables?
It's entirely unsuitable. The Ozark soil is suitable for one thing, and that's forages. And the only things that forages can support is animals. Humans cannot live off grass, and that's the only thing that can reduce in almost the entirety of the western United States. That's why we have massive ranches all throughout the western United States. In the Ozarks and other parts of the country, exact same thing. We cannot grow crops here. That's the exact reason why we have the highest number of cattle concentration of cattle in a 100-mile radius around Springfield, almost in the entire world.
Yeah.
And it's because of that.
I believe I read somewhere that there are more cattle between Joplin and Kansas City per square mile than anywhere else
Yes,
in
it's
the
accurate.
country. And that's a very good point. But I think Jessica does have a good point that maybe there are some alternatives that we with modern science and technology and advances that we've made in agriculture, maybe there are some solutions that we haven't discovered yet. Now I'm going to ask you about some of the health problems associated with meat. I know that meat consumption has been linked to like heart disease and obesity. And whereas vegans have a much healthier lifestyle and they eat healthier foods in general. Do you have anything to say about ways that we can you take it from me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. If you eat an excess of anything, it's going to cause major problems. There is a huge amount of fat in meat. That is accurate. That will lead, if you eat an excessive amount of it, to obesity. That will lead to heart disease. That will lead to a lot of things. We, as the agricultural industry, just need to provide leaner options because really so many of the issues come from that excess of saturated fats that is in meat. So people, I'm not going to tell everyone that they need to eat massive amounts of meat daily. That is not healthy. However, small amounts of lean meat, even daily, can totally support a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. So I'm not going to support that we need to have massive amounts of it, but there's nothing wrong with small amounts of it in an individual's diet.
And Jessica, do you have a rebuttal really quick?
Yeah, real quick rebuttal, I guess. I think that some of the more modern and progressive institutions, they are making ways to satisfy the demand of meat where people are like, oh, it tastes so good, but by providing a plant-based option. Like I know at the University of California, Berkeley, they have a whole program based on creating meat substitutes out of like plant-based options. And I don't know if you guys have ever tried something like Beyond Meat or like Morningstar Bacon, stuff like that. It's like, it tastes just like the real deal, but it's a lot more sustainable and a lot more healthier for you. And so even if people want the taste of bacon, there's a lot of, plant-based options that are just as tasty and a lot more healthy,
Yeah, and here's my response to that is, I agree. We probably can get to a point where we have, I believe that there is totally a way for a vegan to live a healthy lifestyle and have these alternatives and not even have the craving for meat. That is true. However, I argue that should not be the ethical standard because the truth is that veganism today is a very privileged diet. It is incredibly difficult for people in food deserts today, in impoverished areas in America, to even get fresh vegetables. So how are we going to say it's the ethical standard now for you to completely abandon the cheap meat you're getting and live off these few small amounts of vegetables that you're getting, or expect them to pay enormous amounts of money that they don't have to travel to wealthier areas? It's just, I think that is the ethical problem. And one of the biggest examples I'll give, you look at the nation of India, where nearly 50% of their young children are malnourished. This country is an entirely vegetarian culture. And as a matter of fact, it is illegal in most instances to even slaughter a cow because in that culture, in the religious majority of Hinduism, it's wrong to use cattle. But the problem I see is that unlike America, where in America we have options to every fruit, every vegetable, every crop at our fingertips, that is not the case in the developing world. And there is huge starvation and malnourishment problems in this country because they do not have access to that. What they do have access to is meat right in front of them that could solve so many problems. And not everyone in that country is Hindu. They have one of the largest Muslim populations in the world. There are individuals who do not submit to that ethical standard, and yet they are unable to access this huge source of nutrition and are literally starving because of it. So that is what I see as an ethical problem. That is an example of a country that has accepted veganism and vegetarianism as the standard, and they are facing the consequences. My argument is I see no need for us to go that direction. I see no need for us to say that this is a standard you should reach. I say if someone wants to have those healthy non-meat alternatives and they're able to do so, and we are able to get to that point, so be it. But individuals that want to eat meat and find it affordable and available to them should also be able to do so.
Two questions back on that one. So first of all, I've noticed that produce is just as easy to grow like my own backyard garden than it would be to raise a cow in my backyard. Mm-hmm. And so I a little bit disagree with the standpoint of, if it's easier to grow vegetables or animals. But I do want to ask you how well, actually, how do I say this? The guy who came into the PSU the other day to the Good Food Revolution book, I don't know if any of you guys were able to attend that speech. I just overheard, I wasn't able to attend the event, but what I heard over in, like the synopsis of it basically was that he was saying that we can help impoverished countries by telling them to grow crops and stuff like that, just because it's a lot more sustainable approach towards their economy. They can grow, the produce is, it's a lot easier to grow, basically what he was getting at and telling people that in that situation. So it's a little bit contradicting what you were saying. I don't know if you wanted to address, I don't know, were you able to attend that?
No, I was not. But I would say when you look at situations in the developing world, the fact of the matter is when you live in New Delhi, India, where there are tens of millions of people stacked in apartments trying to make $5 a day as opposed to $1 a day in their village, coming into the city, we can't expect them to grow their own food. We can't expect them to live this lifestyle. In the United States, we might be able to expect that of our middle class. But in the vast majority of the world, we cannot expect this of them. The access is simply not there for them to have those healthy alternatives. And they are scraping by to even meet their nutritional requirements. And so I 100% agree that we should do everything we can as a nation that has this privilege to be able to help them grow crops, to grow healthy produce. And if they so choose to live vegan with that, wonderful. Let's support that. Let's help them get to that point. They're not there. And so, and in America, people are not there. And so I don't think it's right to put an ethical standard of veganism or vegetarianism when there's people in that circumstance.
This has been a really interesting debate, and it's been great to hear both sides. My last question is for both of you, and I think it's a really important one. Where can we find some common ground? Like where does veganism and the agricultural industry, where do they come together to kind of find a solution and a path to move forward that will satisfy both mindsets? And Jessica, would you like to start?
Sure, I can say one thing is I was talking to some guys in the ag college, and I think what they were saying is, I don't know, you can either agree or disagree with this in your rebuttal there, but they were saying that we can move towards more crops, plant-based crops and stuff like that, because they were saying that, ag is not just surrounding around animals. Ag is not just chickens and cows and pigs. Ag is also, corn and tomatoes and peppers as well. And so I think if we dedicate a lot more of our resources and our time towards researching those, how to grow better crops and how to change Missouri land to being more sustainable for growing crops and stuff like that, then I feel like that could be a step in the right direction, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I'm in the College of Agriculture. Since we're in Missouri, most of us grow cattle, but we have a huge number that have grown crops at home. And so all the gung-ho animal science majors are like, we need to fight for animals to be in the system forever. But if the demand goes to more crops and less animals, so be it. I support a free economy. And so if that's the case, so I'm sure that soy farmers today anyone who is raising soybeans and is producing that is very happy that people aren't buying milk as much as they were. People that are growing vegetables and alternatives to meat are probably very happy with this change. So the agriculture industry is much larger than meat, and if the demand shifts to the point where there is less demand for meat, then I am not going to be at the forefront crying that this is a crime to anyone. Yeah. That is just how demand goes, and as long as people are living healthily, which they can, then I have no problem with that.
That's really great to hear from you, honestly, Mercer, because I feel like a lot of the big ag business people get really defensive towards veganism, especially when I heard that, the Dairy Farmers of America were funding campaigns for Domino's because Domino's recently announced in the UK that they're going to be having vegan cheese on their pizzas. And so here in America, they're pouring millions of dollars into campaigns to have help your dairy farmers on the pizza boxes and stuff like that, just to, make them feel like we owe something to this type of economy. And to hear that we can drive demand based on what our consumers want and that farmers are actually going to listen to it, that's really reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been such a great talk, and I think that a lot of the concern just with both sides is kind of a fear of what's going to happen if either side continues. And one of the concerns from the ag business is definitely the economic side of it. And so many people rely on the income from agriculture that it's just sort of an issue. And so I think that this has been a really a good, small, but it's been a step forward towards kind of finding a compromise and reaching more of a sustainable, more educated state of society. Again, this has been Mercer Martin and Jessica Albright. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Real Talk.